All right, healed family. Welcome once again to the channel. If this is your first time joining us, thank you so very much for deciding to share this space and time with me on Every Detail Matters with Alexis Danielle. Listen, it is an absolute pleasure and honor to really dedicate this channel to you. It is a channel where we cultivate a safe space to embrace every detail of your story because it matters. I don't care if it's the ugly parts of your story, the good, the bad, the indifferent, whatever it is, we embrace it, we acknowledge it so that we can create a brand new narrative that we can live and live well, not only for ourselves, but also for our family. So, welcome to episode 4 of the Breaking the Legacy of Silence series. Listen, this series has been sobering to say the least, where we have really dived into some topics that have been hard to acknowledge only for the purpose of creating a pathway for healing. And so this episode is entitled Pain Based Parenting. And I know when you hear that title, so many thoughts and questions can go through your mind as to what is pain based parenting? What do you mean by that? And so, pain based parenting happens when unhealed trauma becomes the foundation of how we raise our children, right? And so I also want to say, full disclaimer, I am not a parent. I am blessed to be an auntie, but I have not birthed any children. But here's the thing, I get the opportunity to serve parents on a daily basis. And so I understand that there is something special and honorable about being a parent. So pain based parenting happens when unhealed trauma becomes the filter for how we raise our children or even how we relate to others we care for. So you may not be a parent of your own children, but you may provide care for children. You may provide care for a loved one. And so therefore you are modeling some type of parenting, right? So it's parenting that comes from what we've survived, not what we've healed from. I'm going to say that again. Pain based parenting is parenting that comes from what we've survived, but not what we've healed from. So it is parenting from a place of unhealed trauma, unaddressed trauma, untreated trauma that comes up and manifests in such a way such as fear. So as you're parenting your children, as you're providing care for a loved one, you do it from a place of fear because you know what you endured as a child, or you know, or you've been traumatized, to say the least, by events that have occurred that makes you be over controlling in a sense. And so you may parent from the place of being over controlling. You are over controlling your children as far as what they do, how they do it, when they do it, because from a place of fear. Okay. So there's also this dynamic of pain based parenting that is called guilt driven discipline. Have you ever heard your parents tell you, or your grandmother tell you, when you got in trouble as a child, um, are you gonna act like this? Are you gonna do this based on out of all the things I've done for you? Right? You ever heard that? I did. I didn't hear it that often, but I heard it. And there is nothing wrong with saying that, especially when we found in our childhood or even children we're raising now that tend to be ungrateful. There's nothing wrong with reminding our children the effort we've put in, the resources we've exhausted, etc. But when it becomes guilt driven discipline, it is when you lead with that in your parenting. It is always something that you are reminding your children about because you're parenting from a place of pain. Maybe some things that occurred in times past were not acknowledged or even identified as valuable. And so there was a deficit. And so when there's a deficit or a place of emptiness that we work from or that we parent from, it helps us to highlight all of these things that I've done for you, as a way to discipline our children from a place of guilt. Okay. Also, another way that pain based parenting manifest is avoidance of affection or emotion. Now, this one is really, really sensitive because I know a lot of parents who just simply were not taught and were not shown how to show love. They didn't receive it. They didn't hear the I love you. They didn't get the hug and the kiss after school. They weren't greeted with positive salutations and greetings. They didn't experience that type of emotion, or perhaps they went away for camp and came back. They didn't hear, I miss you, right? So the affection was not shown. And so now that same child that has grown up into an adult and have had his or her children, affection is still missing because you weren't shown that. And so now your children are growing up missing the same affection that you did not get because you don't know how to show it now. And like I said, that is something that is very sensitive because, again, I know parents who don't mean to be that way. They want to show their kids love and affection, but they simply do not know how. I've heard parents say, I didn't grow up with love and affection, so how do I begin to show it? So this presents a wonderful opportunity through therapy, through prayer, through discussions of difficult topics to create a pathway to begin showing or learning, if you will, what does affection look like for me and my children. So I may not have received the I love you or I miss you, but now I want my children to know I'm thinking about them. I want my children to know how much I really do care about them, and I want to show them. So maybe that looks like just starting out with a hug. You would be surprised how many people never received genuine hugs. It seems basic, but it's not basic to everybody. So, again, this presents an opportunity to begin to rewrite the narrative of how you show love to your children. Okay. So, like I said before, I've worked with many families. I've also seen it in varying points in my own family. And, really just coming from a place that I don't want to be stifled. I don't want to be hindered by what I didn't get. I don't want to be stifled. I don't want to be crippled by what I didn't see in my childhood. I want to do better than my parents did. And so many people have that testimony. So many people have taken that stance as parents. I want to do better than what my parents did. But not realizing that without healing, fear takes on a brand new form. Sometimes we control instead of connecting. So I'm kind of bouncing around. We talked about pain based parenting coming up as fear, pain based parenting coming up as over controlling, being over controlling, pain based parenting coming up as guilt driven discipline, right? Those are just three ways, and having the opportunity to rewrite a brand new narrative as to how you want to begin to parent for yourself now. But it's hard to make that shift, right? There's a shift that must take place from what I experienced, what I didn't get, to what I now want to do with my own children. You got from A to Z, right? Something has to take place. An intervention, a lot of times, has to take place in order to bridge that gap and implement new practices. So, unhealed trauma can look like dysregulation and reactive parenting. Unhealed trauma can look like dysregulation. I don't know how to regulate my emotions, right? Reactive parenting. So instead of me being proactive and intentional about how I parent my children, whether it's around affection or discipline, I'm now reactive when something goes wrong or something happens. I'm now reacting from a place of emotion, from a place of fear, right? Another clinical insight, you all, is kids don't just need protection, they need presence. I want to say and just interject right there, your genuine presence with your children goes a long way. And I'm lifting that up and I'm pausing to say that because sometimes you don't have to have all the answers. Sometimes you don't have to have all of the tools. Sometimes you start at the place that you are, which means I don't know how to do all of these things, but I'm just going to start by being present. What's a way we can kind of demonstrate that or emphasize that with an example? So, say for instance, it's the situation where you didn't receive love as a child, you didn't receive affection. You now want to begin changing that narrative for your children, but you don't know where to start. So instead of, let's say, when your children come home, you immediately go into the kitchen and begin to prepare dinner as you normally would. But now you may prepare dinner in advance so that when your children comes home, you sit with them. How was your day? What was the highlight of your day? Presence really goes a long way. Presence does not mean you're physically present in the house. Presence can mean you're learning how to become emotionally present with your children. Here's the thing to remember: when we don't feel safe emotionally, we unintentionally make our children feel unsafe relationally. When we don't feel safe emotionally, we unintentionally make our children feel unsafe relationally. So if I'm afraid and I don't feel safe, I'm now projecting that onto my children as to what relationships look like and will look like for them in the future. In an earlier video, I believe it was episode 1, when I talked about attachment styles, what we receive in childhood or don't receive, what needs were met in childhood or left unmet, shapes how we show up in our adult relationships. So, what is happening unconsciously and unintentionally is we are shaping for our children what they should believe about relationships. Just something to remember, okay? I want to leave you with this: God does not parent us through fear. God does not parent us through fear. He parents us through grace and truth. And that's a nugget to leave with you, because I want parents to understand that you are not your pain, you are not what happened to you, and you can begin to rewrite the narrative of how you parent your children based on what you did not get when you were a child. And you give yourself grace to do it. Give yourself grace to learn how to do it. Give yourself grace and truth about what happened to you. Sometimes it takes pulling back those layers in order to do something new and different for your children. So, in closing, this episode of Pain Based Parenting is not about guilt or shame at all. It's about awareness. It's about awareness. So, whether you're parenting children or, watch this, reparenting yourself, or mentoring somebody younger, a niece, a nephew, or whatever, we have a responsibility to check the pain we're projecting, because healing is possible. And you don't, I don't, we don't have to raise another generation from survival mode. So, if this spoke to you in this episode, please feel free to leave a comment, to share a video with somebody that has been struggling on how to be the good parent they desperately want to be, but because of the trauma they've endured, they have been struggling. Please send it to them so that they can begin to check the unhealed trauma that they've been carrying and release it, and to begin to do something new and different from a place of healing and wholeness. I love y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time.